Welcome to the conclusion of the Deck Showcase series here at the Epic Storm. I am Bryant Cook, and today I am presenting you with Paradoxical Outcome Combo. Alright, so why don't we just hop right on in, no need to waste any time, and I'll be completely honest, I am glad that these are done. 2-a-day videos for the last week has been killing me, and hopefully you enjoyed the series. Let me know in the comments down below if you did. But why don't we hop right on in. So I'm going to go through some of these cards a little bit more quickly than I have on previous videos for cards that I've gone over. So these Polluted Deltas, Marshall, I've already shouted you out a million times across these 10 videos. Go find one of the times that I've said that you're great. Thank you for selling me the playset of Deltas. I got them signed by Rob Alexander at Magic Fest or Grand Prix Seattle when Deathrite Shaman was still legal. And then here we have our Scalding Tarns. Jack Stanton got Philip Straub to sign these, who was a little bit of a curmudgeon, didn't really like signing, and Jack made it happen, so thank you to Jack Stanton. And then down here we have Flooded Strand and Misty Rainforest. Shelley Wan works for Disney, so her signing schedule is, I guess there's like a no-compete clause or something, so in order to get your card signed by Shelley, there has to be small windows, so you can email her, but she might not be signing at the time. And then Andreas Roca, you can also email them. I got these signed in 2014. I emailed them. I heard for a little while they quit signing, but then they might have started up again. I'm not sure. So just reach out to them via their website. That is the best thing to do. If you're ever looking for signatures, always email the artist via their website first, and then try things like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But I found that to be the best method. And I've said this across a bunch of my videos at this point, but I started playing Magic during Invasion. And I chose one of each art, and for Island, I chose this art because it looked a lot like Tropical Island, and at the time, I was playing a lot of like Rug Threshold, you know, that era. So Invasion lands just have a spot near and dear to my heart, so I love them. I really do. Yeah, so moving on. Down here we have our copies of Underground Sea. I've mentioned in previous videos that I was not intelligent enough to pick a language when I started getting my foreign Black Border dual lands. It sucks, but so I have mismatched duels. I have 2 German and then 2 French. It is what it is. I'm fine with it. As long as I have one of each in German for the Epic Storm, that's what I really care about. So yeah, it doesn't really bother me all that much. And some of them I've gotten pre-signed. Like this one was definitely one that I picked up already signed. These 2 I believe I got signed. And then Tolarian Academy. There's actually an academy in the store if you're interested. Japanese, unsigned though. That was my academy before I picked up the signed one. Stephen Danielle is living in Washington, and I emailed them about signing, and they're like, you have to go through my agent in Italy. The agent in Italy only does 1 signing per year, and I'll be honest, the comments in that group are like, when am I getting my cards back? When am I getting my cards back? They've been gone forever. So instead of going through that process of shipping to Italy, having the person in Italy ship back to the United States, and then once the artist is done signing, go all the way back around, I just decided to purchase a signed one. So yeah, it was just a good decision for me. It saved me a lot of hassle. And then down here we have our Mox Opals from the Epic Storm. Thank you to Juan Valdez for selling these to me, not signing. I got a pretty good deal on them. It was right around the time where people were terrified that I was going to get banned in Modern due to KCI. So I picked them up then. And I ended up getting a little bit of a scare price on them. And I think it worked out in the long run for me. Also signed by Vulcan Baga. If you're interested in Vulcan Baga signatures, you should check out Mark Aronowitz's signature group in the description down below. Mark has group signings with hundreds of different artists, and it's just really easy to get your card signed that way. So yeah, definitely a sweet card. And one of like the key cards that makes Paradoxical Outcome unique. It's one of the few vintage decks that actually leverages Mox Opal. And then down here we have our Power. Are 6, or I guess it's 5 jewels plus Black Lotus. These are all Chinese fakes. I bought them off eBay. At the time, eBay doesn't sell them anymore because I recently just tried to buy a new set. But yeah, I bought this set. It was like 40 vintage cards that you could buy, and it was like $40. So you're essentially paying $1 per proxy. But I just bought another set off Etsy where apparently they're super realistic Black Border looking Power. So hopefully I'll get those soon. I was hoping that they arrived by today so I could scan them in, but they didn't. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm just never going to buy Power, if I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's a wise decision at this point in my life. I'm not even sure if Paper Eternal Weekend will ever come back. With the success of the online Eternal Weekends the last 2 years, I'm sort of skeptical. If they do ever come back, maybe I'll look to borrow some so I can play in Eternal Weekend, but I'm not actually sure if we're ever going to, travel down to Pittsburgh for another Card Titan Eternal Weekend. Like, I'm just not sure if that's in the cards. And then down here we have our Mana Crypt. I've mentioned in the few of the other videos, so the previous vintage video plus the Commander video, how I originally had one, and then the artist really, really wanted to sign in purple. So if you want to get your Mana Crypt signed, really, really specify what color you want, or else you'll end up with a color of the artist's choice. And while I wasn't a fan of purple, I like my signatures black and in Sharpie if possible. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And then over here we have Soul Ring. These are actually out being signed at this very moment, hopefully. They're in the mail, at least, by Mike Barrick. And they're the first ever Soul Rings that have been printed Japanese in foil. We've had Japanese previously with the normal card frame. Unfortunately, this one is full art, because I'm not a fan of full arts. But it is the first ever Japanese foil. Maybe at some point in the future, if they make a Japanese foil non-full art, I'll grab that instead, because I really don't like full art cards. But yeah, I mean, it's cool that it just exists. That's what I have to say. And these are sort of, these being Mishra's Bauble, are sort of an inclusion for me. So one of the things about this deck list, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but there's no copies of Urza Saga. This is the actual deck list that I would play in a vintage event tomorrow if I was going to play Paradoxical Outcome. And one of the things that I realized when playing other builds of this deck throughout the course of the year is what's nice about the Saga builds is that they have additional artifacts to turn on Mox Opal, but I feel like part of the problem with the Saga builds is it forces you to play more lands, which in return makes your explosive draws less consistent, and on top of that it makes Boss's Citadel a lot worse. So I really just wanted additional artifacts. Well, Mishra's Bauble sort of fills that role. You can use it with Fetch Lands to sculpt. It turns on Mox Opal. You can pick them up and put them down with Paradoxical Outcome. It sort of does everything we wanted in this deck. And if you need to filter them for a card at any point in the game, you can definitely do that. They work well with top deck tutors that we see down below here as well, with Vampiric Tutor and Mystical Tutors, which, pretty good. So I think that these are worth having. I know that they're not a popular choice, but I definitely think they're worth it even without Luris. And if you're wondering why they're not signed, Chippy is pretty much an impossible signature to get at this point. They work for Valve, but they don't like signing. A few artist agents have reached out saying, like, name your price per signature. We could get you a bunch of money, and Chippy's just not interested. The last time that I knew that they signed, it was 2011 or 2012 at a Grand Prix, and they've just haven't done anything with Magic since. Sort of a white whale for me. I want my baubles signed and I want my probe signed. Although if Chippy were to have a resurface, I would definitely need a set of Cold Snap ones ASAP. Cold Snap Mishra's Baubles are on my want list. I just haven't found a playset of them yet. So it is what it is. Over here we have Mana Vault. I actually shipped this out this week to get signed by Christine Choi. A watcher of the channel knew of a way of connecting with them. I contacted them and they were willing to sign. So if you're watching this, thank you. So it is currently out being signed by Christine Choi. Lindsay's Divining Top. The original Kamigawa ones are just stupid expensive nowadays. And for a card that's only played in Vintage PO, I can't justify the cost. So I will live with Rob Alexander tops that will eventually be signed next time I see Rob. Rob goes to a ton of Magic Fest / Grand Prix. So I'm sure I'll see Rob Alexander at some point and get these signed. I don't think Rob does group signings, or at least I don't think that they do. Raymond Swanland, Mark Roanowitz's group signing signature service once again got this done this year. Raymond, before joining Mark's service, only signed like once every 4 or 5 years. So it was really, really tough to get Raymond's signature. I think he's annually now through Mark's group. So if you're interested in Raymond Swanland's signatures, 1, they look awesome. And 2, they're just super beautiful and hard to get. So it's just all around great. And I've had a couple people ask me like why I'm not using the Judge foil. I don't know if you've noticed my theme or not. I like Japanese foils. And if possible, first print. which is weird considering how we're looking at these Cold Snap ones in these tops, but I want Cold Snap ones, and I'm probably not going to get the tops if I'm being honest. So yeah, no DCI promo for me. I want Japanese foil. And then over here we have Mystical Teaching, or not Mystical Teachings, Mystical Tutor. I guess Teachings is a tutor though, am I right? Lindsay Look. She lives in the Northeast, so do I. So I saw her at Grand Prix Hartford in 2019 before the world closed. And yeah, I got a bunch of cards signed. She also signs through Mark's group, so definitely go check that out. Fake Ancestral Recall. This is my spare brainstorm, so I'm sure if you watched my legacy video, you saw that I had a brainstorm damaged back in 2015, 2014 maybe, and I picked up another brainstorm, which is this one, and then I sent it out to get signed, so the signature is different on it. But then with the invention of hard perfect fits, it sort of solved my problem. And then in 2020, I reached out to the person I sold this to and said, asked them if they wanted it, if they still had it, because I would like it back. And I ended up buying this back from them. And so now I have 5 brainstorms. That's the entire story, or at least what I'm willing to share out of it. So why don't we just move on? And then here's a Ponder. I took this one out of the Epic Storm. I usually don't take cards out of TES, if I'm being honest. I try to take it out of other decks. So normally if I was to like put this deck together to play or something, I'd grab the one out of Pauper, the M10 one. But for here, I figure I'd show you my my nice Mark Teaton signature. Taxian Probe, once again, chippy, just super hard to get signed. At one point, I would like to get my set signed, but who knows if that will ever happen. Erica Yang Flusterstorm's Iconic Masters. I've told this story a few times already, so I'm going to keep it short. But these were actually sent to my old address, and I had to knock on the address at like 7 a.m. in order to get these back. And it turns out that they had them for like 5 days. They opened up my mail. They're like, oh yeah, we didn't know what they were. So I'm very, 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 very lucky that I got these back, and pretty thankful because I use them in tons of different decks. They're really nice looking cards. And then another Erica Yang over here. This one was not signed at that same time. You can see that because this marker is a little bit thicker. I bought this one from Warren Connell. Today is actually Warren's birthday, so happy birthday, Warren. And Warren gave me a pretty good price on these before the COVID bubble hit. So I'm sorry that Warren lost out on a little bit of money, but, you know, c'est la vie. Fake Time Lock, Dress Down. So that's the reason we're not playing... what is it called? Urza Saga. So this is Dress Down PO. The idea is that, one, Saga doesn't do what we want, but two, it allows us to play Dress Down to beat the other Saga decks, but also beat Hate Bears plus a bunch of other things. It's really nice that this card just, you know, has cantripping ability on it. It sort of took the slot from Preordain while shoring up some of our bad matchups. So Dress Down was just absolutely perfect for this deck. Really, really big fan. I've even tried builds with 3 of them in the main deck. So this card's really good for PO, and I'm sure that a lot of other PO pilots out there will agree with me. Over here we have Hercule's Recall. This one I got signed at IlixCon in 2017, I believe it was, maybe 2018. At the time, I only owned 2 of them, and I thought to myself, when am I ever going to need 4 Hercule's Recall? Why would I buy 2 more? And then I started playing Vintage. So only 2 of them are signed, unfortunately. But Ralph Horsley usually goes to IlixCon. And if you're from England, they do live there. So maybe you can find them locally to get stuff signed if they're ever at like a convention or something. Definitely go check that out. David Martin, Merchant Scroll. It's been pointed out on a previous video, the other Vintage video I uploaded, that this is actually a misprint. They printed, instead of putting sorcery here, they put the card name, which is why these are worth so much money. I think I knew that and then forgot it over time because I was like, yeah, these are just worth a boatload of money because they're the only Japanese foil. So that was slightly incorrect. But then I got this signed once again through Mark's signature service in the description down below. Zach Stella. Used to live in New York where I live, and then they moved out west to Seattle to work for Wizard. So I have a bunch of cards I want Zach to sign. So Zach, do a signing or go to a Magic Fest or something, please. I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, this is the first ever Japanese foil Demonic Tutor. A few people have messaged me asking me why I chose this art. And it's not that I'm in love with this art. It's just, it's the first ever Japanese foil. So that's what I went with. Tinker, once again, I bought this from Warren Connell. Warren, thank you. Signed by Mike Rabe, who, once again, I recently read something today about people not getting their cards back. So I have these snaps I just bought for my Pauper Twiddlestorm deck that I would like to be signed, but now I'm super hesitant. So Mike, I hope you do a signing soon and give people back their cards. Narset, Magnali, not really a whole lot to say here. I kind of bought mine at a really good time. So when they first came out, they were like $40, and then the Japanese full Narsets went up to like 200, and I decided that I wasn't going to spend that much money on a Narset. So I waited and then sort of forgot about it, and by the time that I looked for them again, they were back down to $40 because it was post restriction. And it sort of worked out for me that I got stupid lucky, but it's just what happened. And then I think I got this sign when I got my Monastery Mentor sign, and you'll see those down below. Down here is Yawgmoth's Will, Ron Spencer. I've talked about this in other videos because my swamps are signed by Ron Spencer, but they're the only artist that I will ship to without asking, just because Ron checks his email like once a year. Where if you send cards to Ron Spencer, they'll get back to you in 2 weeks. He's just super good about it. So make sure you tip well. You need to provide return posting, or you need to send an envelope to send back to yourself with postage on it. But yeah, Ron is just like a professional when it comes to signing, like no time. Tendrils of Agony. Yeah, I've talked about this enough in previous videos, so we're just going to move on from Tendrils. Colossus Citadel. This is currently actually out being signed by Jonas Durrell. I had to Photoshop this in from a previous scan. And it's sort of like what made this deck good. In my opinion, well, you're going to say that I'm wrong and PO was good before Tinker Citadel. But I played PO before Citadel, and it was fine. But what made the deck stupid good was being able to Tinker for Citadel, and it is my favorite thing about Vintage, hands down. I love Tinker Citadel. It is the reason to play the format, in my opinion, and if you're someone that likes shops, no one likes you anyway. So don't worry about it. But I love Citadel. It's just so much fun. And it's part of the reason that we run 2 since he's Divining Top. There's even a 3rd down below, because for a little bit I was playing 3 tops in my lists. Went back down to 2. But top Citadel just instantly wins the game, so playing more copies is not a bad thing. One thing about like the Tinker Breach list and a lot of these blue Saga lists is that they play 1 top, which makes Citadel less consistent, which then they complain about Citadel not being good. It's like, well, you cut the 2nd top, you did it to yourself. Yeah. Over here we have Repeal. I am a known Repeal hater. I don't think the card is that good. That said, when you're playing just strict Dimir / blue-black, you need a way of answering permanents, unfortunately. So without Teferi or Prismatic Ending or Pyroblast, you need something. So that something is Repeal in this list. I don't love it, but it does fill the role quite nicely. And plus, you can pick up your Moxen with it, so if you ever need to, you can just cycle it for essentially free. Paradoxical Outcome, the namesake of the deck. I can't remember who it was, so I'm sorry, but I sent these with someone to get signed at a SCG con because Nils Ham was the guest of honor, because Nils is from England, I believe. Maybe Germany, I can't remember. But so yeah, I don't have good memory of what happened there. I'm sorry, I don't remember everything. But I do remember buying the set off eBay, and I felt like I got such a steal that I was excited that I told my friends. I got the entire playset for $60 shipped, and I felt like I got away with something because at the time, like if you wanted to buy one, they were $25, and I got the full playset for $60. So that made my week at the time, at least. And then Forcible, signed by Therese Nielsen. It is not EMA, it is Double Masters. The EMA ones are just way too expensive, but I talked about that in previous videos. I'm just going to keep going because I want to be done with this series already, so we're just going to keep on moving to the sideboard. And then down here you'll see these are the 2 that I picked up later after Alex Con when I saw Ralph Horsley, Fatal Push, Eric Duchamps. You know, these are really good against the hate bearish decks that are sort of popular in Vintage at the moment. There's the Bant version and then the green-white version that was really popular for a few weeks. Really good against both, and you can cast it off your Underground Seas, obviously. I don't think it's worth playing a Swamp. Some people have asked me previously if I would play a Swamp if I was playing this many pushes. I don't think so. Swamp doesn't really do enough in my opinion, so I'm not really a big fan. And then over here we have Needle. These are primarily for the Bizarre Baghdad matchups. And then you can board them in against Bug to name Wasteland. But we're not playing Urza Saga, so you don't really need to do that. I think that's sort of diluting your deck a little bit too much. I think that you should just let Bug have their Wastelands and focus on doing more powerful things. So I am a big fan of Needle staying in the board in the Bug matchup, but definitely sided in for the Bizarre decks. Speaking of Bizarre decks, this entire row is for Bizarre decks. I'm sorry, I don't own a Tabernacle. I did have a fake one at one point, but I sold it to my friend RJ. RJ, I hope you're enjoying it. And by sold, I mean like he gave me, I think he actually bought me 2 sodas. I think that was the deal. We were at the game store and he's like, I will buy you 2 sodas. So RJ bought me 2 sodas for my Tabernacle, my fake Tabernacle. And then Tormod's Crypt, Juan Valdez gave me a super good deal on a full set of them. People at the time were asking a dumb amount of money, and I just wasn't willing to pay it. Like, somebody told me like $2,200 for a playset, and I was like, no, thank you. So Juan gave me a very, very, very good deal, and now I own a full playset of signed Tormod's Crypts by Christopher Rush. And Nile Spellbomb, I'll be honest, this is just a placeholder. This is supposed to be Soul Guide Lantern, but my Soul Guides are out being signed, and I just like didn't feel like photoshopping this over it. So this should be Soul Guide Lantern, but it's the same card essentially. Like, you pick it up, you put it down, you draw a card, whatever. Soul Guide is better because you get the incremental advantage with Paradoxical Outcome, but same effect, good enough. And then I really like 1 copy Yixla Jailer as a tutor target because it sort of beats those graveyard decks on its own because they don't want to have to board in Contagion or something else against you. So just by having 1 in your deck, you have the secret weapon against them, where if you tutor for it, it's just lights out. So if you're playing a deck with tutors in it, definitely consider Yixla Jailer against those Bizarre decks. The 4th copy of Fluster, and then my big dumb robot, Sphinx of the Steelwind, and then Blightsteel Colossus. I bought this Colossus pre-signed, which is something I normally don't do, but it was on eBay, and I got a very, very good deal on it. And it's one of my favorite cards. I love the big dumb robot. And then Sphinx of the Steelwind has just been so good in the metagame recently at dodging Dak Faden, Force of Will, or no, I'm sorry, Force of Vigor, Oko, a bunch of different cards. It's really good against the Bizarre decks. These 2 are for different matchups. This is for your blue control decks with Dak Faden, Force of Vigor, plus Bizarre decks, and the robot's really for shop. So between the 2 of them, you have most matchups covered. And the only other one that wouldn't be covered is Combo, but that's what Blossom Citadel is for. So your Tinker has an I win target in almost every single matchup. Playing your favorite combo deck in Paper just got so much easier with the Epic Storm Mini Token Pack. You can pick one up at theepicstorm.com/shop for $13. It includes 64 double-sided mini tokens. That's 128 tokens total. And they include 10 black, 10 blue, 10 red, 5 green, 5 white, 3 colorless, 20 storm counters. That means that you can count your way all the way up to 20 for Grape Shot, everyone's favorite Stormwind condition, a Galvanic Relay Exile Indicator, 4 treasure tokens for Strike It Rich, and then 10 monk tokens for our vintage friends. It also has Slime Time Live, Ave Progenitor Ooze tokens with the power and toughness already built in to make playing in Paper so much easier. No fumbling around with dice, we've got you covered. Make sure to go grab those if you're playing Modern. And then Squirrels versus Goblins, Chatterstorm versus Empty the Warrens, the Battle of the Ages. You definitely need 20 Squirrel tokens and 20 Goblin tokens. You're going to love this mini token pack, I promise. And once again, you can grab that at theepicstorm.com/shop. All right, the home stretch, extra cards. Hull Breacher. I picked these up this year. I think they were roughly $30 each. I just wanted to own a playset, and then I ended up cutting them from my deck. So I didn't end up playing it in Tinker Breach, didn't end up playing them here. I am not a big fan of the wheel-based combo strategies. I just don't think they're that good, if I'm being honest. I did a lot of losing this year playing Hullbreaker decks, and the problem is that you end up being so inbred for the mirror that you lose to shops and Bizarre decks, and that's where you end up with these cards. So I think it's a little bit of a trap. You don't have to agree with me, that's fine, but I'm not a fan of them in general. And over here we have Snapcaster, which is a card that usually sees quite a bit of play in these blue-black PO decks. My list doesn't have it because it is a dress-down version. I don't want anti-synergy in my deck, so that is why there's only 0 Snapcasters, I should say. additional copies of Dress Down, Rebuild, an extra copy of Hercules. Some people have tried it. I've actually never tested it. I just happen to own one, but it is a card that people sometimes play in PO. Spare copies of Repeal, Windfall. Windfall's really old tech. When I started to play Vintage, you would sometimes see one Windfall in lists, and then it's sort of fallen out of favor. You don't even see Time Twister anymore. It's like the Twister effects or the draw 7s just aren't really what you want to be doing in Vintage anymore. It's just that the format's so powerful and there's so many free spells. And that's sort of something that changed with the Modern Horizon sets, is now every deck has free spells, it feels like, where before it was just the blue decks. So you get punished more often from these wheel effects. Mind's Desire. Cards unfortunately unplayable in PO. And it should probably just be unrestricted because it's not that good. Unrestrict Desire, you cowards. And then Dig Through Time. I don't like revealing Dig to my boss's Citadel, so I don't play it. And that's just sort of the truth. Like, you can play it to get with Merchant Scroll, but I've consistently found myself very underwhelmed by Dig. Plus, it works against your Yawgmoth's will, so I'm not really a fan. Night's Whisper. So these I've not gotten signed yet by David Martin. I need to do that. I think I picked them up after I sent out the Merchant Scroll to get signed. These are a card that I really like playing in PO, but not playing in this list. I think when I was testing them, I found that there was too many Hull Breacher effects currently in the metagame, so I just didn't really want to play them. But they're really nice for casting turn 1 off of a Mox. Any Mox that you draw, you tap it, go fetch up an Underground, so you cast this and get a head-on card. So one of the things with PO is that in order for Paradoxical Outcome to be effective, you need a high density of cards, because you need a lot of permanents in play, and then you have to protect your outcome and make sure that it resolves. And then from there, the world's your oyster, but you have to get to that point. And Night's Whisper is a card that helps you get to that point, because you're able to just put artifacts on the table and then recuperate the card advantage or card disadvantage lost. So that's why Whisper is playable. Not playing it in this list because we're playing the Baubles, but still a great card. I'm a big fan of this effect in general. Our 4th copy of Fatal Push. And then Sedgemoor Witch. Everyone thought that this card was going to be the bee's knees, and it's not bad. People call it the Black Monastery Mentor, and it's close. I think that it's a little underrated right now, where previously it was overrated. I think it likely exists somewhere in the middle. I haven't tried it yet recently because, well, this is a dress down list, but you could probably just play Mentor. Well, people used to splash white in Paradoxical Outcome just for Monastery Mentor, where you could just play Sedgemoor Witch and then Flusterstorm one of your own spells at some point to create a million different pest tokens that you'll find down here, and then sacrifice them to the boss's Citadel in order to win the game, much like you would the monks. Where you can do this with Sedgemoor Witch, and also there's not all of those triggers making your combo turn way longer. You just cast a few Flusterstorms once you're ready to win, and then Sedgemoor Witch does all the work for you. So I think that this card is currently underplayed a little bit, because it's certainly very powerful, and you don't have to splash white for Mentor anymore. So it's Sedgemoor Witch, likely good enough, but people just aren't playing it. And then down here we have our additional copies of Jailer. Also got these from Warren Connell, actually. I don't normally go for the silver signatures, but being on the black, they're good enough. And they are original print. And then over here we have our pest tokens. I picked these up this year. I have 10 of them, actually. They were like 25 cents each. They were very, very cheap. I'd like to get them signed. I haven't actually reached out to the artist, but I'll probably do that at some point. And I love that they're doing Japanese foil tokens nowadays. Like, it's so awesome. I'm just a big fan. Prismatic Ending. I actually qualified for the showcase qualifier for the Mox this year, so I top-aided a showcase challenge to then qualify for the showcase qualifier, and I did that using straight blue-white PO with no black in it. And the idea was that Prismatic Ending is just so good. It answers everything that was really popular at the time, and at the time that I did that, Pyroblast was at an all-time low. So the white splash gave you Lavinia and Teferi to just wreck the mirror. And on top of that, you got Prismatic Ending to hit Deafening Silence. It hits Spheres on curve. It hits Collector Roof, plus a bunch of other things. So I was a really, really big fan of Ending. I believe I played 3 in that list, and it just really overperformed. Well, when Red came back, that list wasn't as successful because Teferi's obviously just really weak to Pyroblast, and Lavinia dies to Pyroblast as well. So those were two things, but then ending. So like ending's still good, right? Well, when red came back, so did Ragavan. And I was like, oh, that shouldn't be an issue. Not a big deal. And then I started testing it, and it was just really embarrassing losing games to Ragavan while holding multiple copies of Prismatic Endings in my hand. Because every single turn they would just dash it over and over, never allowing you to ending it. So one Modern Horizons 2 card beats another, and I just don't think you really want to be on the white splash anymore. And then over here we have Portable Hole, which is a similar effect to Prismatic Ending. It exiles a permanent converted mana cost 2 or less. It tucks it underneath. But the problem with that is that while this does turn on Mox Opal, it also gets absolutely destroyed by Force of Vigor. And Force of Vigor is just super popular, so you can risk it and play the Portable Hole because you could later on pick it up with Outcome too. The problem is if the deck with Collector Roof has Force of Vigor, you just get destroyed, where if you just had Prismatic Ending, that's not a concern. So I think you don't want to be playing Portable Hole, but you can if you want to. And then Balance. Balance is one of the big reasons to play white, in my opinion. The card is just so powerful. I do have to get it signed by Kev Walker at some point, but it was one of my favorite things about playing the White Splash. It was definitely this and Prismatic Ending. Teferi and Lavinia are fine, but it was definitely Ending and Balance that I found to be the best parts of it. And then over here we have Monastery Mentor. For the sake of the video, I decided not to upload all 4 because I wanted to showcase a few of the Monk tokens that I have as well. But you're only allowed to play 1 in Vintage anyway. But signed by Magnali, card's super good. I do think it might start to become a relic of the past for PO. The white splash just doesn't feel great right now, but also we're not in an era where you need to splash white just for a win condition anymore. So we have Sedgemoor Witch, we have Urza's Urza Saga. There we go. I can remember words. So I think the days where you just needed a really good win condition and needed to splash for it are gone, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And then down here we have Reckless Impulse. Justin Gennari popularized this card for a few weeks, where essentially it's Nice Whisper that doesn't make you lose 2 life, but you have to splash a 3rd color for it. I think one of the biggest things that people were forgetting about this card is that it does force you to change your play patterns a little bit, but it's also really awkward with counter spells because you don't gain the card advantage from counter spells. So if you're playing Flusterstorms and Forests, which we are, people can play around it, and then you're just down cards, which is just super awkward. And then on top of that, if it ever exiles Tendrils or Blossom Citadel, you get mega punished. So I'm not actually a big fan of this effect in PO. And then down here, Galvanic Relay, not really a vintage card. That said, I included it because I think it might be worth testing out again. So when Modern Horizons 2 came out, I tested Relay in a Grixis build initially, but the metagame is very different. And if you think about it, Relay really plays into the strategy that PO does, where you want to play a bunch of 0-mana artifacts very quickly and early. And Relay rewards you for that. The downside is that it's vintage, so you can, get vintaged. But I think Relay might be worth testing. Right now, Flusterstorm is really popular, so that's a little bit of a concern. But this is exactly the style of effect that PO would like. So I think it's probably worth testing, especially when you're on the play and you can jam this. I think it's going to be good. I tested it for a week when it came out. I just don't think that was enough. So I think we probably want to be trying Relay again in PO. I think that could be the boost that this deck actually needs. And then, obviously, if you're playing red, you want Pyroblast to deal with Narset and Hull Breachers, Force of Wills, tons of broken, degenerate vintage cards. It's just one of the best vintage cards, in my opinion. And if you're playing PO without it, maybe you start to ask yourself why you're not playing red. This list is obviously Dimir, but I'm a really big advocate of Pyroblast in my vintage decks, which is why I ended up playing Tinker Breach in Eternal Weekend and not PO. Mana Gorger, Hydra, shoutouts to Roland Chang for selling me these. Ended up getting them signed the very next week. This card actually top 8'd Eternal Weekend 2020 in a bug PO list. It's fine. The green mentor, so to speak, it just becomes large and in charge. People don't really run answers for it, so if you're looking for an effect that dodges Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, Force of Vigor, it does it all. It really does. It can be a little bit awkward if the metagame is full of Jeskai, because Jeskai does run swords. So, take it with a grain of salt. This card's fine. It's not bad, but you have to ask yourself, why am I playing green? So that's the big thing. Like, if green was more popular, I'm sure we'd see a lot more Mana Gorge or Hydras, but Veil of Summer is not Pyroblast. And I know if you're not coming from Vintage, you might not realize that, but there's a pretty big difference between proactive and reactive protection, and you don't really want to be playing Veil of Summer, in my opinion. We have Lavinias and Teferis that I talked about previously for the white splash. Here they are. And then Sprite Dragon. When I was crushing in 2019 into early 2020, I was playing a lot of Sprite Dragons. And then I feel like the card has sort of been power crept out of Vintage, which is unfortunate. There was a metagame a few months back where I thought that Sprite Dragon was primed for a comeback because Bug was super popular. And Sprite Dragon is really good at crushing Bug. But it never felt like that was the game plan that I wanted to be doing, so I eventually moved away from it. Maybe Sprite Dragon will come back in the future, who knows, but I love the card. It's super fun, it's really powerful, and only 2 mana. I talked about our Crypts, our top, and then the last cards in this video are Urza Saga. I do think Saga is a powerful effect. I just don't think you want it in PO. I do like it in Tinker Breach, and sometimes it's about realizing what your deck does well and what it doesn't do well. And I think that PO is not a very good Saga deck, which it doesn't make a lot of sense because this is a tutor for your top or your whatever, but playing the additional lands to support Saga, well, Saga is the additional lands, but to support it, it feels bad. Like, you don't want to. Like, if you could play 13 lands and 3 Sagas, you do that in a heartbeat. But playing extra lands just isn't really what you want to be doing. So that's what I've got. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you're interested, here's our other 10 total deck showcases, plus the products I actually use. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the deck showcase series. I'm thankful to be done. Cheers, happy holidays, see ya in the new year. Hey, Bryant Cook here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, but also follow the social media channels down below. If you want to support this content directly, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/shop. And if you need a little bit of assistance with the Epic Storm to get to that next level, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/tutoring. Don't worry, there's more great content coming right up.